ruining a custom Brioni suit usually guaranteed a one-way trip to the bottom of the East River. Today, it merely meant Dante Moretti's new secretary had tripped over her own feet, launching scalding espresso. She weighed 250 pounds, broke every rule, and somehow completely broke him. Panic was the standard scent in the executive suite of Moretti Logistics. Situated on the top floor of a sleek glass high-rise in Tribeca, the import-export firm was a multi-million-dollar front for the most ruthless faction of the Sicilian Cosa Nostra operating on the East Coast. Dante Moretti, the don of the family, ran his empire with the precision of a Swiss watch. He wore bespoke Italian wool, checked the time on a platinum Patek Philippe, and demanded absolute terrifying perfection. 6 secretaries had quit in the last month. One lasted 4 days before a nervous breakdown. Another sprinted out of the building in tears after Dante merely raised an eyebrow at a typo in a shipping manifest. The men in his organization, hardened enforcers who carried concealed Glocks under their Armani jackets, feared him. A civilian receptionist didn't stand a chance. Enter Bridget Sullivan. Desperation had driven Bridget to the staffing agency on a rainy Tuesday. At 26, she was acutely aware of how the world saw her. She was a big girl, 250 pounds of soft curves, unruly auburn curls, and a tendency to apologize to inanimate objects when she bumped into them. She didn't possess the sleek, razor-sharp aesthetic that Manhattan executives usually demanded. Her blazers were always a little tight across the shoulders, purchased from the clearance rack at Macy's, and her center of gravity was a persistent mystery to her. When the agency sent her to Moretti Logistics, they hadn't warned her about the boss. They only told her the pay was astronomical. Her first morning was a masterclass in disaster. Stepping off the private elevator, Bridget managed to catch the heel of her sensible loafer in the metal grate of the threshold. She stumbled her oversized tote bag swinging wildly and crashed directly into a towering man made of muscle and menace. It was Luca Dante's underboss and chief enforcer. "Watch it!" Luca snarled, his hand instinctively grazing the bulge at his waistband. "Oh, sweet mother of cheese, I am so sorry," Bridget gasped, scrambling to pick up a handful of loose tampons, half-eaten granola bars, and crumpled receipts that had spilled across the imported marble floor. She looked up, her round face flushed violently pink. "Gravity and I are in a bitter, ongoing feud." Luca stared at her. Women in their world were usually silent, calculating, and model-thin. This woman looked like a flustered baker who had wandered into a shark tank. He stepped aside, utterly bewildered, and pointed a tattooed finger toward the massive oak doors. "The boss is waiting. Bring him a black espresso. Lavazza. Double shot. If it's cold, he'll throw it at you." Bridget nodded frantically, her double chin trembling slightly. She marched to the executive kitchenette, successfully brewed the dark, viscous coffee, and balanced it on a silver tray. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy oak doors. Dante Moretti sat behind a desk, crafted from reclaimed mahogany. He was breathtakingly intimidating. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, dusted with dark stubble and eyes the color of a winter ocean. He was currently reviewing a ledger detailing millions of dollars in illicit weapons shipments, though to the untrained eye it looked like olive oil inventory. He didn't look up. "Put it down. Sort the files on the left. Don't speak." "Right away, Mr. Moretti," Bridget squeaked. She took 3 steps forward. Perhaps it was the plush thickness of the Persian rug. Perhaps it was a divine intervention, designed for maximum humiliation. Bridget's left foot hooked behind her right ankle. She pitched forward. The silver tray went airborne. Time seemed to slow down. The scalding black espresso soared through the air in a perfect, terrifying arc, landing directly on Dante's pristine $2,000 Brioni trousers. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that preceded an execution. Outside the glass walls, Luca and 2 guards winced, waiting for the inevitable roar. They silently placed bets on whether Dante would throw her out the window. Dante slowly stood up. The dark stain spread across his lap. His jaw ticked the muscles coiling tightly. He looked at the shattered porcelain on the floor, and then down at the woman sprawled on his rug. Bridget was on her hands and knees, her face buried in her hands. "Just kill me," she moaned into the carpet. "Honestly, just take a heavy book and end my suffering. I'll pay for the dry cleaning. I'll pawn my kidney." Dante stared at her. He was accustomed to people weeping, begging for their lives, or freezing in abject terror. He was not accustomed to an overweight, disheveled woman offering up her organs for dry cleaning money. "Get up!" His voice was a low, gravelly command. Bridget scrambled to her feet, wiping her hands on her skirt. She looked him dead in the eye, bracing for impact. She wasn't crying. She looked embarrassed, yes, but there was a stubborn tilt to her soft chin. "I am incredibly clumsy, Mr. Moretti," she said, her voice shaking, but surprisingly loud. "I once broke my own nose sneezing. But I type 90 words a minute. My filing system is flawless, and I need this job to pay my rent. So if you're going to fire me, do it quickly so I can beat the rush hour traffic." Dante's cold blue eyes scanned her. He noted the cheap fabric of her blouse, the soft roundness of her figure, and the absolute lack of deception in her expression. In his world of vipers and sycophants, she was a glaring, blinding anomaly. She was raw, messy reality. He grabbed a napkin and casually wiped at his trousers. "Clean up the glass, Miss Sullivan, then start on the files. If you bleed on my rug while picking up the shards, you're fired." Bridget blinked. "That's it. Do not test my patience," Dante warned, softly returning to his ledger. But as she hurried to gather the broken cup, he found his eyes lingering on the soft curve of her hips. Surviving the first day was a miracle. Surviving the first week was a statistical impossibility. By Friday, the betting pool among the mafia foot soldiers had reached $5,000. Everyone had money on Bridget, quitting or getting carried out in a body bag. Instead, she was systematically tearing through the office like a chaotic, soft-edged tornado. Bridget's clumsiness was the stuff of legends. On Wednesday, she accidentally tripped over a heavy duffel bag in the corner of Dante's office, a bag containing $1 million in unmarked, untraceable $100 bills. Instead of asking questions, she just shoved it back under the sofa with her foot and muttered about the cleaning staff leaving gym bags around. On Thursday, she jammed the high-tech shredder, completely destroying a subpoena that the district attorney had spent months trying to serve the Moretti family. Luca had spent an hour trying to fix the machine, secretly ecstatic that the evidence was gone, while Bridget sat in the corner, eating a blueberry muffin and apologizing profusely. But it was her competence that baffled them most. Behind her clumsy exterior was a mind like a steel trap. She reorganized Dante's encrypted files, which were supposed to be locked, but she guessed the password was his late mother's maiden name and found a $200,000 discrepancy. "Mr. Moretti." She had poked her head into his office on Friday afternoon. Dante was cleaning a customized Beretta 9mm at his desk. A normal secretary would have screamed. Bridget just sighed, assuming it was a weird, rich guy paperweight. "What is it, Bridget?" he asked, not bothering to hide the weapon. He liked saying her name. It was soft. It fit her. "I balanced the Palermo shipping accounts. Someone named Vinny the Snake has been overcharging you for freight costs by 14% over the last 6 months. I took the liberty of drafting a strongly worded email demanding a refund, though I left out the profanity." Dante stopped wiping the barrel. He looked at the spreadsheet she placed on his desk. She had just casually uncovered an embezzlement scheme by one of his capos that his own accountants had missed. "You found this." he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Well, yes. Numbers don't trip over their own feet, she said, a self-deprecating smile touching her lips. Is Vinny going to be a problem? I can call him if you want. I have a very stern phone voice. Dante let out a sound that vaguely resembled a laugh. It was a rough, rusty sound that made Luca, who was standing by the door, physically jump. No, Bridget. I will handle Vinny. The shift in the office dynamic was palpable. The fearsome Don Moretti, who regularly ordered hits before breakfast, started leaving a fresh box of cannolis from a bakery on Mulberry Street on her desk every morning. He claimed they were extra from client meetings, but Bridget knew he only met with heavily armed, terrifying men who didn't eat pastries. She felt a strange, terrifying warmth blooming in her chest whenever he looked at her. He didn't look at her the way men usually did, with either immediate dismissal of her size or creepy fetishization. Dante looked at her like she was the only real thing in a room full of ghosts. But the reality of Dante's world was bound to crash into Bridget's bubble of blissful ignorance. It happened on the second Tuesday. Dante was in a heated meeting with two men from a rival family out of Chicago. They were massive, ugly men with scarred knuckles demanding a cut of the waterfront shipments. The tension in the executive office was thick enough to choke on. Guns were drawn under the table. A bloodbath was minutes away. Bridget, blissfully unaware, was struggling to carry a towering stack of heavy moleskin ledgers. She nudged the heavy oak door open with her hip. Mr. Moretti, I have the woe. Her heel caught the edge of the carpet. The laws of physics took over. 250 pounds of momentum propelled her forward. The giant stack of heavy leather-bound books flew from her hands like artillery shells. One thick ledger slammed directly into the face of the lead Chicago enforcer, breaking his nose with a sickening crunch. The man screamed, dropping his hidden weapon, as blood sprayed across the mahogany desk. Bridget crashed into the coffee table, shattering it completely. She groaned, rolling onto her back in the debris. Oh, sweet buttered biscuits. Not again. The room froze. The second Chicago enforcer reached for his gun, but Dante was faster. With lightning speed, Dante's Beretta was leveled perfectly between the man's eyes. Your friend had an accident, Dante said, his voice cold as ice. I suggest you take him to a hospital, and if you ever come into my city demanding a cut of my ports again, the next heavy object to hit your face won't be a book. The conscious enforcer grabbed his bleeding partner, dragging him out of the office in absolute terror. Dante holstered his weapon. He walked around his desk and looked down at Bridget, who was brushing glass off her ample thighs, her face a mask of mortification. Did I interrupt a meeting? She squeaked. I think I broke your table. And that man's face. I am so fired. Dante knelt down in the broken glass. His expensive suit was ruined again. He didn't care. He reached out his large, rough hand, gently brushing a stray auburn curl away from her terrified eyes. Bridget, Dante murmured, his thumb grazing her soft cheek, making her breath hitch. You're not fired. You just earned a raise. Bulletproof glass was not something Bridget usually thought about, but the newly installed 3-inch thick pane dominating Dante's office window was becoming incredibly hard to ignore. Reality had slowly seeped into Bridget's worldview over the past 3 weeks. She had initially convinced herself that Moretti Logistics was just an aggressive corporate entity, but you could only discover so many hidden compartments filled with untraceable cash or overhear so many hushed conversations about handling the waterfront unions before denial became impossible. Dante Moretti was not a CEO. He was a don. He operated with the ruthless efficiency of the old-school mobsters, reminiscent of the legendary Gambino family, or the fearsome reign of Paul Castellano, but with a terrifying modern edge. Bridget sat at her mahogany desk, nervously chewing on the end of a very expensive ballpoint pen. She knew she should quit. Her mother back in Ohio would have a heart attack if she knew her daughter was sorting the calendar of a man who commanded an army of hitmen. Yet Bridget couldn't bring herself to leave. The pay was clearing her crippling student debt, the health insurance was stellar, and then there was Dante. Whenever Dante looked at her, the cold, calculating mafia boss vanished. He brought her pastries from Little Italy. He demanded the office thermostat be adjusted, because he noticed she was sweating in her thick blazers. He had fired a mid-level capo just last week, because the man had muttered a derogatory comment about Bridget's weight in the break room. The capo was simply gone by Tuesday. Her soft, 250-pound frame, which had been a source of anxiety her entire life, was treated like absolute royalty in this criminal empire. The terrifying enforcers guys named Tony the Wrench and Sal Knuckles now held the elevator doors open for her and awkwardly offered to carry her heavy tote bags. She was the untouchable queen of the Tribeca high-rise, protected by the most dangerous apex predator in New York. But apex predators have rivals. It was a gloomy Thursday afternoon when Bridget stepped out of the building. Dante had been locked in a tense meeting with his inner circle regarding a hostile takeover attempt by Frankie Russo, a brutal, erratic upstart from the Brooklyn faction. Frankie was infamous for his violent temper and his desperate desire to conquer the Moretti Empire. Bridget, craving a specific double chocolate brownie from a bakery 3 blocks away, had slipped past the lobby security. She just wanted 20 minutes of fresh air and a sugar rush. She never made it to the bakery. As Bridget waddled down a quiet alleyway to take a shortcut, a black, unmarked cargo van screeched to a halt beside her. The side door slammed open. 3 large men wearing tactical gear and dark ski masks jumped out. "Grab the fat one, Frankie wants her alive," one of the masked men barked. Bridget didn't even have time to scream. A rough hand clamped over her mouth, tasting of stale cigarette smoke and cheap leather. She thrashed her heavy body, proving surprisingly difficult for the men to maneuver. "Jesus, she's heavy! Lift her, you idiots!" another voice yelled. "I have a glandular issue, you absolute cretin!" Bridget muffled against the leather glove, kicking her sensible loafer directly into the shin of the closest kidnapper. He howled in pain, but there were too many of them. They shoved her violently into the back of the van. Her head cracked against the metal floor plating, and her world dissolved into a fuzzy, terrifying darkness. When Bridget regained consciousness, the smell of mildew rust and old fish immediately assaulted her senses. She groaned, trying to rub her throbbing head, but her hands were bound tightly behind her back with thick nylon zip ties. She was sitting on a flimsy wooden chair in the center of a massive abandoned warehouse. Rain pounded against the corrugated tin roof above. "Look who finally woke up." A grating, nasally voice echoed through the damp space. Bridget blinked rapidly, her vision clearing, to reveal a wiry man in a cheap, shiny silver suit. He had slicked back dark hair and a permanent sneer. This had to be Frankie Russo. He looked exactly like the kind of man who would try to overcompensate for his lack of intellect with excessive violence. "Who are you?" Bridget asked, her voice shaking. She tried to shift her weight, but the wooden chair beneath her creaked ominously. It clearly wasn't rated for a plus-size woman. "I'm the guy who's going to take down Dante Moretti," Frankie sneered, pacing around her. He pulled out a sleek silver cell phone. "And you, Miss Sullivan, are my golden ticket. My spies told me Dante has a new pet. A clumsy, oversized secretary he's suddenly very protective of. It makes no sense to me, sweetheart. I mean, look at you. You're no supermodel. But word on the street is that Dante would burn the city down for you." Bridget felt a hot flush of shame and fear crawl up her neck. Even in a kidnapping, her weight was a punchline. "He won't negotiate with you," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "He's a businessman. I just answer his phones. I spill coffee on him. I am a liability. You've wasted your gas money." We'll see about that." Frankie laughed cruelly. He dialed a number and put the phone on speaker, holding it up so Bridget could hear. The line rang twice before a voice answered. The sheer icy rage radiating from the speaker made the temperature in the warehouse plummet. "Russo." Dante's voice was barely a whisper, yet it sounded like a death sentence. "If you have touched a single hair on her head, I will peel the skin from your bones while you watch." Bridget gasped. "Dante, don't give him anything. I'm fine. Just fire me, and let him deal with my student loans." "Shut up!" Frankie backhanded her across the face. The strike stung, snapping Bridget's head to the side, leaving a bright red mark on her pale, soft cheek. Through the phone, the silence was deafening. Then a chilling sound echoed from the speaker, the metallic slide of a heavy weapon being racked. "You just signed your own death warrant, Frankie," Dante said smoothly, the whisper gone, replaced by the roar of a monster unchained. "I am coming." The line went dead. Frankie laughed, nervously putting the phone away. "He's bluffing. My men have this perimeter locked down. There are 30 guns outside." Now we wait. Back in the Tribeca high-rise, Dante Moretti was a man possessed. His bespoke Brioni suit jacket was discarded on the floor. He strapped a Kevlar vest over his crisp white shirt and slid 3 extra magazines into his shoulder holster. Luca, his terrifying underboss, was already barking orders into a radio, mobilizing the entire Moretti family arsenal. The office, usually a place of quiet, menacing administration, had transformed into a war room. They tracked the burner phone ping to the old Navy shipyards in Brooklyn. Luca reported, checking his assault rifle. He looked at Dante, his hardened eyes betraying a hint of genuine concern. "Boss Russo has a small army there. It's a fortress. We need a tactical approach." "There is no tactical approach, Luca," Dante snarled, grabbing an automatic shotgun from the hidden armory behind his bookcase. His blue eyes were entirely black with rage. The image of the red mark on Bridget's soft cheek burned in his mind like a branding iron. She was pure. She was light. She apologized to staplers when she dropped them. She was the only sliver of humanity he had left, and Russo had put his filthy hands on her. "We go in through the front. We kill everyone who stands. Nobody breathes but her." Within 20 minutes, a convoy of heavily armored, blacked-out SUVs tore through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, crossing the Brooklyn Bridge like a cavalry from hell. Inside the warehouse, Bridget was sweating. The zip ties were biting into her wrists. She had been testing the strength of the flimsy wooden chair beneath her. She knew her body. She knew she was heavy. For the first time in her life, she decided to weaponize her weight. Frankie was standing by the loading dock doors, nervously smoking a cigarette as he barked at his guards. There was only one guard left near Bridget, a large, sweaty man holding a baseball bat, looking bored. Bridget took a deep breath, shifted her center of gravity, and violently threw her 250-pound frame backward. The cheap wooden chair didn't stand a chance. It shattered instantly upon impact with the concrete floor. Bridget hit the ground hard, gasping as the wind was knocked out of her. But the violent crash shattered the backrest, loosening the zip ties just enough for her to violently yank her hands free. The guard with the bat spun around. "Hey, stay down, you fat cow!" he yelled, raising the bat and lunging toward her. Bridget scrambled to her hands and knees. Panic and adrenaline surged through her veins. She desperately looked for a weapon. Her hand brushed against a heavy rusted iron pipe lying in the debris. As the guard swung the bat downward, Bridget rolled to the side with surprising agility. The bat smashed into the concrete, sending sparks flying. With a frantic, uncoordinated swing, Bridget shoved the heavy iron pipe straight upward. She wasn't aiming. She was just flailing. But her infamous clumsiness struck again in the most miraculous way. The pipe caught the guard perfectly between his legs, right in his groin, with the force of a desperate, terrified woman. The guard's eyes rolled to the back of his head. He let out a high-pitched squeak that sounded entirely unnatural. For a man of his size, dropped the bat and crumpled to the floor in a fetal position, vomiting violently. "Oh, sweet merciful heavens, I am so sorry." Bridget shrieked out of pure habit, tossing the pipe away. Suddenly the massive steel doors of the warehouse exploded inward. A heavy armored SUV rammed straight through the loading dock, crushing Frankie Russo's guards under its massive tires. The air was instantly shredded by the deafening roar of automatic gunfire. Dante Moretti stepped out of the moving vehicle before it had even fully stopped. He looked like the Grim Reaper clad in Italian wool and Kevlar. He moved with terrifying lethal grace. Every shot he fired found its mark. The syndicate soldiers under Frankie's command fell like dominoes. Luca and the rest of the Moretti crew flooded the warehouse efficiently, dismantling the rival faction in a symphony of calculated violence. Frankie Russo panicked. He pulled his pistol and aimed it blindly into the smoke, trying to find cover. Dante didn't even flinch. He walked through the hail of bullets as if it were a light drizzle, raised his shotgun and fired. Frankie was blown backward against the brick wall, his chest a ruined mess of crimson. He slumped to the floor dead before he realized what hit him. The gunfire ceased. The warehouse was eerily quiet, save for the sound of rain and the groans of the dying. Dante dropped the empty shotgun. His chest heaved as his frantic blue eyes scanned the smoky, blood-soaked room. "Bridget!" He roared, his voice cracking with a vulnerability no one in his crew had ever heard. "I'm down here!" A wobbly voice called out from behind a stack of wooden pallets. Dante sprinted over. Bridget was sitting on the dirty concrete, her clothes covered in dust and grease, holding her bruised cheek. Next to her, a large mobster was still groaning and clutching his groin. Dante dropped to his knees, his hands hovering over her, as if he were afraid she would break. He gently cupped her face, his thumb softly brushing the angry red mark Frankie had left. "Did he do this?" Dante asked, his voice trembling with a deadly edge. "Did he strike you?" "Yes, but it's okay, you shot him." Bridget babbled, tears finally spilling over her thick lashes. "Dante, I broke their chair. And I think I ruined this man's chance of having children. I didn't mean to. He was going to hit me with a bat, and I just swung the pipe and Dante couldn't take it anymore." He leaned forward and crashed his lips against hers. It was a desperate, consuming kiss. Bridget froze for a microsecond before melting against him, her soft, ample curves pressing into his hard, tactical armor. She wrapped her thick arms around his neck, kissing him back with all the pent-up fear and secret longing she had harbored for weeks. He tasted like gunpowder rain and the finest espresso. When he finally pulled away, he rested his forehead against hers. "You are never leaving my sight again." He breathed heavily. "Do you understand me, Bridget? You belong with me. You belong in my world. I don't care how many coffee cups you break. I don't care how many ledgers you drop. I will build you an empire of soft carpets and padded corners. But you are mine." Bridget let out a watery, exhausted laugh. "Are you offering me a promotion, Mr. Moretti?" "I'm offering you the throne," Dante corrected softly. He effortlessly scooped her 250-pound frame into his strong arms, standing up as if she weighed absolutely nothing. He carried her out of the blood-stained warehouse, stepping over the bodies of his enemies, with his beautiful chaotic queen secured tightly against his chest. Back at the Tribeca office, things changed permanently. The bulletproof glass remained, but the sharp edges of Dante's world had been softened by the woman who now ruled beside him. The mobsters learned to stop placing bets on her clumsiness and started bringing her extra pastries from Brooklyn. She still tripped over the rug. She still jammed the shredder. but nobody ever dared to laugh. Because Bridget Sullivan was no longer just the clumsy secretary. She was the heart of the most ruthless mafia family in New York, and Dante Moretti would gladly burn the world to ash just to see her smile. Did this heart-pounding tale of mafia romance, loyalty, and unexpected love keep you on the edge of your seat? Bridget and Dante prove that sometimes the clumsiest mistakes lead to our greatest destiny. If you loved this audio drama, please hit that like button, share this video with your fellow romance lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts today.